information, I want to welcome you to Trending Now on Social Media, Sustainable, Realistic Social Media Strategies for Substance Misuse Prevention with Jennifer Beer. This presentation was prepared for the Great Lakes PTTC under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. The opinions expressed in this webinar are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services. The PTTC believes that words matter and uses affirming language in all activities. A few housekeeping items for you. If you have technical issues, please individually message me in the chat. At the bottom of your screen, it's going to say Rebecca Buller. If captions or live transcript would be helpful, please use your Zoom toolbar near the bottom of your screen and choose live transcript. AI note taker options are not allowed. Please do not activate that application. And if you do, we will ask you to turn it off or remove you from the Zoom room. Questions for the speaker, please put those in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. You put them in the chat, we might lose them as they scroll by, so please use that Q&A section. You will be redirected at to a short survey at the end of this webinar, and we'd appreciate it if you could fill it out. It takes about 3 minutes. It helps us improve our events and to report to our funders. And certificates of attendance will be sent out via email to all who attended this webinar in full, and it can take up to 2 weeks to receive those certificates. If you'd like to know more about what we're doing or information on upcoming events, please see our social media pages. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce our presenter, Jennifer Beer. She's the Director of Communications at Prevention First. At Prevention First, she leads social media, public relations, and marketing strategies and coordinates problem gambling prevention strategies. Additionally, she provides training and technical assistance on sustainable, realistic communication strategies for community organizations and prevention professionals. She serves as a board member for the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio. And now I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to move us right along here. Should I be able to advance the slides already, Chris?
Yeah, I gave you the remote control. So if you let me know if you can't, if it's not working. Is it not cooperating? I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and click. Just let me know when to go forward.
All right. So we have a few chat questions today. As we sort of start this off, what are you most excited about communicating regarding your prevention work? Messaging is always important. It's always good to know what we want to push out through social media, and also what prevention story is most important to you to communicate in your community. So is it a sense of need? Is it success stories? Is it just general education that you're looking to push out? All right. I'm going to go ahead and hop us to the next one. All right. So our learning objectives today, these were provided in the marketing information. We're going to pull together some practical tools and resources and strategies. And we're going to identify how to increase engagement and reach. And then we're going to integrate how these social media plans and strategies sort of help with information dissemination, event promotion, storytelling, these types of things. Okie doke. All right. So when we introduce and we talk about sustainability and realistic social media strategies, I want to outline right from the beginning that some of these are going to apply across the board with your agency's needs. Others, you may have to tweak and adapt. And that's one of the key pieces of this presentation, is to understand that prioritizing and adapting are two of the best resources you have to be successful and to sustain and be realistic about the goals you have around social media. And some of these might not apply to you at all. But when you go back and adapt them, you may see that there are ways that you can further expand your capacity or do some things like that so that you can plug in more to these types of strategies. You're going to come away with some ideas, a little planning, and hopefully a renewed excitement and sort of commitment to social media, because it's a big, big part of the work that we do, but it's also the most changing, the most dynamic part of marketing and communications right now. So in the chat, I believe they put a link. So we're going to work on a couple documents. I'm going to old school it with a worksheet. Okay. So there's a document called PF exclamation point, thought questions, social media planning. If you have a second screen or a third screen, or you have the ability to quickly print that out, that's fabulous, because as we go through this presentation, we're going to be talking in terms of planning around 7 thought questions. Now, if you don't have the capacity to look at that or print that out at this time, that's totally cool, because this presentation is set up a little more tutorial style. You'll have access to the PDF of the presentation, and along with the documents, you'll be able to easily follow along. If you're a coalition leader or part of a coalition, this is a nice, 20-minute exercise to do at a meeting in conjunction with strategic planning, or as a support or consideration when you're doing that. We're going to, after each section, take a little bit of a pause to think about those questions. We're not going to break into chat rooms or do anything like that. And if you don't have access to the document, it's a good opportunity to sort of jot down some notes, those types of things. All right. So when we build capacity, there are some ultimate challenges right off the board when we do social media for prevention work. There are limited resources, and our biggest resource is going to be people power. I mean, that's how we do this work. It's by building community engagement, by working in collaboration with each other. Lots of times, a communications person in the scope of prevention work is just missing from the organizational chart. You might have coordinators and managers and all sorts of things, but there really isn't a comm person as specifically outlined to your prevention work. Lots of times this social media strategies are sort of a shared responsibility. So you sit at a staff meeting and everyone's like, we're all going to work on Facebook, or we're all going to put things, expand our Instagram. And what happens is sometimes there's confusion about who does what and who takes responsibility for things. Also, communication and marketing and social media, they're not a part of our job descriptions as professionals in prevention. Lots of times it's just that it falls under all other duties as assigned. Often there isn't a budget or an understanding of the return on investment when it comes to putting staff time specifically into marketing and communication strategies and social media strategies. The other thing is, like I mentioned, this stuff changes so fast. And lots of times the understanding the trends and the learning curve is a huge obstacle in doing this work centered around prevention. And then consistency and frequency are important parts of how we work that algorithm in these social media pieces. So it's one of the barriers to doing this. And of course it takes time, and we all have time. I mean, that's like, if it's not people power, it's time that is a resource that's definitely limited. And the other piece about this is sort of this lofty, unrealistic goals we have. If you have a board, or if you're part of a hospital or a treatment facility, or even a coalition, you might have set really lofty goals. Like, we're going to have a social media plan. And what we're going to talk about today is how to make that plan more realistic and attainable. All right, we're going to pop to the next slide. So capacity is divided. I'm going to divide it into 2 groups for everybody: agency capacity and professional capacity. Okay. When we have agency capacity, we may have a designated marketing or communications person. Sometimes that's specific to your prevention program. Sometimes it's part of a bigger agency. So if your prevention efforts or your department are part of a larger agency, like a hospital or public health department or a treatment provider, there may be a marketing and comm person, and they just might not be aware of the things that your prevention program is doing. Advertising and promoting services like the mission and successes of the agency as a whole are typically the specific goals of those agency-wide marketing and comm people. And we're going to talk about how to sort of build a collaboration with those. Whether you're big or small, your agency is big or small, you should know whether your company or agency has a marketing plan. So that when we're building capacity, we have to know, is there an existing marketing plan? Because if there is an opportunity for you to sort of make sure that the designated marketing and comm person for the bigger organization knows that prevention should be part of the agency marketing plan. It's also important to understand what sort of budget may be available to you. So if you're part of a bigger agency, you may find that part of a budget can be used for your prevention work, but they have to be aware of what grants or programs you will need help promoting. Also, it's important to understand if there are grants or programs that are funded that already have dollars allotted for advertising or promotion. And then the last piece of that is having sort of an assessment on your volunteers and your interns. And lots of times they have specific skills or fields of study or even an interest in social media that you can tap into. So when we talk about professional capacity, we're going to talk in two terms. We're going to talk about yourself as a professional, but also your team. So it's always good to sort of assess what's your experience level. You know, if you don't have a personal Facebook account, then Facebook should probably not be at the top of your list of things to contribute to. But if you have a team member who is active on Facebook, that's probably a better match. Also, learning curve. Everybody has their own preferences with learning curves. Some people are very interested, they're comfortable, and they have a willingness. Other people are just happy to stay in their professional lane. And people power, you know, if it's just you, if you are the only person doing this work in your agency, I don't want you to get discouraged. We're going to talk about strategies that are feasible. And today I want you to pay extra attention when we get to the collaboration section, because that'll offer people doing this solely by themselves an opportunity to see some strategies for them. Time commitment is also always at the top of the list. There's no way around it. In this kind of work, if you think it's going to take 2 hours, it's probably going to take 4. Because we're going to take into consideration a learning curve and not a huge amount of people power. And then job description. So one of the things I mentioned earlier that all duties as assigned, but I think as prevention people, when we're hiring people or considering job descriptions, that it's a valuable strategy to sort of look at adding language specific to promotion of prevention programs. And that can dovetail very nicely into information dissemination. We're going to talk about how that works, but being able to write that into a job description allows everyone's on the same page. So we, as a team or as a department, take ownership of the marketing and promotion of prevention. It allows administrators and managers to see that as a valuable part of the job, especially if you have managers and administrators who are outside the profession of prevention. And it allows them to better allocate time and budget resources if needed. All right, so building capacity. So the next table is going to talk about ideas to how to offset some of these challenges. And we're going to talk in 2 buckets again, staff capacity and also professional capacity. Some of these are relatively easy, and the easy ones I'm going to kind of point out. Some of them are more detailed, and we're going to dive into them a little bit deeper. This next section, these next couple slides are going to lead up to our first thought question, and that is, I want you to think about the capacity that you have professionally and at your agency or coalition. Okay, the thought question is going to be asking you to look at what kinds of things in these next couple slides could you commit to in the next 6 months? What could you commit to in the next 3 months? And potentially even like, what is like, that would be so great if that would happen. Okay, so this first slide, there's quite a bit here. So one of the things, easy things that you can do is create a COM email address. So here, Prevention First, we have COM at Prevention First. The staff all have access to that email. They can log in, the password's provided. It allows us to have commonality around things like Canva or Adobe Illustrator or free platforms that offer graphics. It also allows us to have a central place for people to ask questions from the media or to dump questions from our website. It's just a nice way to create sustainability, because if everything came to Jay Beer at Prevention First and I was no longer here, there then creates this communication gap that not everybody's going to know what's coming through my email. Prioritizing social media, less is always more. There are so many platforms. We're going to talk about prioritizing, dividing tasks. We're going to really look at how to define this within your coalition or your organization. Always look for planned gaps. Is a member changing? Are they being promoted to a new role? And does that new role mean that they might not have as big of a social media presence, or maybe they can step up? And then a look at different tools. So we use our cell phones a lot here at Prevention First. Our CEO is great. She offers a little phone stipend, but we talk about the boundaries and expectations around social media and our phones. You really can't do this work out in the public if you're not committed to being able to use your mobile device. It creates a fluid, sort of sustainable way of doing things, but you can also use Dropboxes and Google Drives. Here at Prevention First, we have a folder on our Google Drive where all of our social media stuff goes, our pictures, the posts that we content, etc. We'll go to the next slide. All right, content. So one of the capacities agencies have about content. So there are 4 things with content that are important: scheduling, curating content, being realistic, and then defining your own success. Of these 4, I want to drop a few ideas around defining your own success. Success does not mean we have so many followers, or we've had so much engagement, or we've had so many posts. You have to look at it differently. It may mean that you're defining your success around one particular grant. If you are doing safe disposal for prescription drugs, maybe your social media goal for the year is to have so many posts and so much engagement and so much collaboration around that specific topic. Sometimes your success can be around one platform. We launched a more robust LinkedIn profile in the last probably 18 months. And that's one of the goals that we sort of set for ourselves internally. Like, we're going to have 300 LinkedIn followers in the first 2 quarters. And then the staff and everybody bought into that goal, because in LinkedIn, our own professional accounts were very important in linking people to our LinkedIn account. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, professional. We're going to talk about how social media strategies fall in line with the CSAT strategy, information dissemination. But I think it's always important to think about common marketing as it pertains to grants and budgets. If at the very minimum, it should cross your mind when you're writing a grant proposal: is there time or resources that we would like to put into social media? Does that mean that we hire a graphic artist to do some very specific social media templates, so that our coalition always has the same template for a meeting reminder or things like that? There are also free trainings. YouTube, Udemy, social media is pretty good about giving lots of tutorials. Those tutorials are almost always up to date, which is a benefit. Once a month, I try to set aside this sort of power hour. Right now, I really want to learn more about the capacity of PowerPoint. And so I've been putting that on my calendar to sort of remind me to tap into that. You can also find a mentor, someone in your agency. Oftentimes, it might be someone living in your house. I know my teenagers, sometimes I go to them and say, like, is this something that you would be interested in on, TikTok or those types of things? And you can also reach out to your higher education institutions in your area. Sometimes they're still looking for comm or marketing connections with their students for them to give a little bit of professional experience. Adding it to the job description, we talked about that. And then tracking time and prioritizing. This doesn't have to be time for time, but I think it goes back to that. If you think it's going to be 2 hours, it's probably going to be 4. All right, we'll go to the next slide. All right, thought question number 1. So I went through a lot of those things. What in the next 6 months could you possibly do as an agency or professionally? So think about that for a few seconds. If you have the worksheet, you can jot down some notes. If you don't, you can go back and the previous slides will help inform you for that thought question. We're going to move to the next session. Okay, social media dissemination. So this is something that I am super, super excited about. I have done this work across communications, but also across prevention strategies my entire professional life. So I've worn both hats, and sometimes both hats at the same time. But social media is part of a communication marketing strategy. But prevention is still specific. These strategies have a legit place in your agency wide marketing and communication plans, but they also are incredibly valuable and applicable and have a place in grant proposals. Social media metrics can support programs and outcomes and advance prevention efforts. So we're going to pop to the next slide. Well, look at this. Here we have the CSAP strategies. So I think it's important to understand right there at the top, we all understand it, information dissemination, that awareness and knowledge in nature and extent of a substance use or misuse, and then the availability and promotion of prevention programs and services. All of these are legit information dissemination opportunities that social media supports. If information dissemination is characterized by one-way communication from the source to the audience with limited contact in between, social media 100% falls into this category. Hop to the next one. Okay, continuum of care, the spectrum of mental and emotional and behavioral interventions. Social media as information dissemination provides information, but also supports and promotes and advances all of the CSAP strategies. So when we look at universal, selected, and indicated, we understand that information dissemination definitely can contribute and advance all of those things, whether we're talking about a program or we're providing information about a potential risk or educating on if you're exhibiting these types of risk factors or these behaviors, where do you fall in the continuum of prevention? Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. So I want you to start thinking about thought question number 2, which is what prevention strategies could social media support in your agency? So you want to think about those CSAP strategies, okay? But there are other ways that social media can play a role in information dissemination. So this fancy looking, lots of words slide in front of you it gives you examples of how information dissemination can be framed. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to raise a few to the top, okay? We talk about raising awareness. Whenever prevention people talk about social media or they talk about marketing strategies, raise awareness. We're going to raise awareness. Or we're going to promote something, or we're going to provide facts. But look at all those other ways that you can promote and support prevention, okay? You can humanize prevention. You can show how your prevention professionals are doing this work. You can introduce risk factors, but you can also introduce evidence-based prevention strategies. You can give a cultural perspective or historical perspective, specifically if you're working on communicating changes in data or evaluation. You can also entertain. Some of the work that we do is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch communities engage and come together under one particular prevention strategies. And the one that is absolutely the easiest, and it sounds kind of silly when we think about it, but as you're going to ask a bunch of people, collaborators, partners, team members to help build your social media team, celebrating success is an absolute great way to energize your staff. Everybody loves at some level being able to say, look what we did. And those are also ways to push out to other prevention partners or funders the importance of the work that we're doing. Okay, we're going to roll to the next one. Okay, here we go. Thought question number 2. What prevention strategy could you support? So think of those CSAP strategies and how could information dissemination help support those? But also think about the previous slide. What kinds of ways could you tell your prevention story? Maybe it's talking more about data and giving a different perspective. Maybe it's telling those success stories. Okay, once again, if you don't have an opportunity to do it, go back and take a look at the previous slides and they'll help inform question number 2. All right, social media planning, choosing a platform. Okay, one of the biggest things I have seen in all the time that social media has been alive in my professional career is that there's so many. How are we going to do all the platforms? How are we going to know all the audiences? How are we going to generate all the content? But prioritization is the number one, like, big sigh of relief. You don't have to do it all. Here, prevention first. So Facebook is our top, LinkedIn is our second, and we are working hard to integrate Instagram. We do not worry about TikTok. We do not worry about X. We don't worry about those things at this point. If our strategies or our audience would shift, we as a collective agency would look at expanding that. Thought question number 3 is going to ask you what platforms you might want to choose to be part of your social media plan. When you have a coalition or an administrator or board members that are like, social media plan, what are you doing for each platform? The best way to frame that for them is we want sustainable and realistic social media strategies, and that means prioritizing platforms. All right, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so I've said this before and I'll say it a million times. Social media is so dynamic right now. Today, content creators and influencers, they straddle and they flip between platforms. Sometimes that's legislation, sometimes it's political shift, sometimes it's shifting dynamics when a certain age is like, nope, we're done with Facebook, that's for old people, and they move to something else. It can also mean that new products and strategies or techniques, reels and certain new products are added to social media. And then the sort of shift and a tendency to want to trend in a different direction happens. All of these things affect algorithms. But I think it's important when we simplify and look at what each platform was originally fundamentally designed to do. It'll give us important insight into which ones are best to choose for the goals that we have. So here we have a taco, okay? On Facebook, you want to tell people that you like tacos. On Twitter or X, you're going to say, I'm eating a taco and I like it, okay? On Pinterest, you're going to show your favorite taco recipe. On Instagram, you're going to eat your tacos with your friends at your favorite taco joint, okay? And at LinkedIn, you're going to say, I made the news eating tacos. So many different platforms, many different ways of telling the story about your taco. All right, let's pop to the next one. Okay, when we prioritize platforms, the first thing we want to look at is target audience. Second, we want to talk about goals and messaging, okay? And established audiences and existing accounts are actually 2 of the top things you should look at. If you have an established Facebook audience and you just have a TikTok account with like 7 people who work in the office, then TikTok is not at the top of your list, okay? And we also want to look at available content. You probably don't want to be on YouTube if you don't have the capacity in either an agency or a professional way to make a lot and generate a lot of videos. You also want to understand experience and understanding. If you have a staff and nobody is on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is not your top priority. And then you always want to look at time. Here at Prevention First, we focus on 2 big ones. We have a third one that we're sneaking in at a capacity of about 15 employees, all of which are working in some capacity for that goal. That seems reasonable for us. If you are a 1-person show or a 2-person show, you probably only want to think about 1 platform to start out with. All right, so here we are. We're going to be at thought question number 3. I'm going to flip the side. Realistic and prioritized. There are 3 spots there. By no stretch of the imagination do you need to have 3 choices, but you should have at least 1 as we kind of move forward in the presentation, okay? Social media planning. Okay, the next 2 sections on social media teams and social media content. I'm going to use some very Gen vocabulary. Prevention First uses this too. You're not going to find these terms in Google defined the exact same way. And there's a reason I do this. We aren't marketing and communication professionals. we do prevention and how the marketing and communication industry might define something or plan for something, it doesn't always translate to the work that we do in the same way. And a shared language in so many ways allows prevention people to help create a team and a vision and a commitment to their social media efforts because there's a shared language. You know, we're not using the language necessarily of the marketing person, we're using the prevention language. This is how we build this up. It also creates a sustainability because these terms are going to be defined in such a way that is very implementable to prevention. So when somebody else comes on, you just have to say, here are the roles and responsibilities of a content creator here at this agency. It's a little easier to build out that sustainability. Okay, next slide. So big surprise thought question number 4 is going to have us write down some names. We're going to call people out. Don't let the people at the office see who you put down where. We don't want to get anybody excited too soon. But as we define these roles and responsibilities, think of who might be able to fit into them. You may have to think outside of your specific or paid prevention team. You may need to think about your coalition members, your partners, employees outside of prevention programming. Okay, so maybe an administrative assistant. Maybe if you're in a treatment setting, maybe there's somebody in the treatment side who already is running some social media and can tag some prevention stuff on. So as we define those, I want you to think a little bit about who can do these things. Now, if you want to flip to the next slide, content planning. Okay, really, this should be everybody. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. So if you have people working evaluation, or you have managers, or you have people doing specific community organizationing and enrichment and engagement, there's the word I'm looking for. You can do planning and have no social media skills or knowledge. Really, all it is defining who contributes to the work, who's familiar with the work, and how is this work impacting them in their sector or their community. You just need to have the people who know the work to start to have a conversation about how that translates into your social media. Okay. So the ways that content planners contribute, they identify topics, they identify partners and events. If you are a content manager, which I'm going to get to, you have one specific role in prevention. Maybe you are in charge of tobacco and alcohol strategies and vaping. Okay, you don't know what the prescription drug prevention focus might be. You might not be aware of what the problem gambling strategies are going to be. So content planners are really important because they're the ones that are going to help us create that list, that to-do list. They're going to help set timelines and deadlines. They're going to help us prioritize posts. And then they're going to be a way to connect to the content creators and assign content creation depending on what particular programs or strategies a prevention professional might be working on. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so this document is part of one of the documents that I've shared. Okay, it's a blank version of this template. So what you see in front of us is a social media marketing plan for Prevention First. Every fall, we have a Coalition Academy. It is an event that we have to promote. What you see in front of you with these dates and these general topics are the first step to content planning. All of the team at Prevention First who works on Coalition Academy sits down and to some point generates this little map, okay? We're starting in July with the save the date, and we end in September with closing registration. You can see there's all sorts of in-betweens in there. We do session highlights, we ask questions, we target a session. So like, we really want to invite our faith community out to this year's Coalition Academy. We're going to be covering the role that the faith community can play in problem gambling prevention. This first planning document has no content. It has a framework for dates and general topics. Very easy for somebody with no social media knowledge or skills to help put this together, okay? Flip to the next screen. Okay, so here prevention first I mentioned, Facebook's our top one. So what you're going to see in a lot of these slides that I'm doing examples for, or how we do Facebook, okay? So the next role, so we have content planners, all the people, okay? And now we have administrators and managers. So here is a portion of Prevention First social media team. Okay, Riley does a great job with us on content management. So what she does is she posts content to Facebook. She can also answer messages that people have. She can look at ads and the insights. And the insights are the data end of Facebook. I'm not going to cover that in this presentation, but Riley has access to a lot of the tools on Facebook. Amanda Kunstarner also is a content manager. Amanda can post a picture directly to Facebook when she's out with a coalition. She can snap a shot and post it directly. So can Riley. Okay. Nicole, our CEO, and myself are both administrators. Here's what I'm going to say about administrators. There is a level of spontaneity that makes social media really great. And it has merit and definitely can result in great content. However, when we have a plan and we've sort of looked at who can fill these roles the best, it's important to sort of look at the commitment that somebody might have to your agency. Hold on one second. I do not want to lose my thought process. Okay. One of the things that's important about an administrator is this role allows access to be up to date. And so it's just a very practical piece to have somebody in that role that has the insight and the authority to take somebody out of a role because maybe there was a compliance violation or their workload or attitude towards that particular role has shifted. And also when an employee is no longer with you. So if you have a content manager that is no longer part of your staff, it's important to make sure that on that list of things that you do when somebody leaves, that you check their responsibilities in the social media platforms, because the administrator can remove those. The administrator can also do all of the other things that content managers can do. So those three roles really should be less focused on content. So I tell Riley all the time, she is our main content manager, but she shouldn't have to go looking for content. For the most part, it should show up in her mailbox, in her email, and she should be able to move that forward. All right, and the next slide looks at what managers can do and what administrators can do. So you're looking at everybody needs to actually have an account. You can't do any of these administrative or content manager roles across platforms if you do not have a personal account. Your personal account and your professional account are completely separate. I get to post as Jen Beer or as Prevention First on Facebook. I have to be cognizant of which little bubble is up, but those two accounts are completely separate, okay? You're looking for a manager probably 2 to 6 hours per week. We want to land in that 2 to 4 section. They have to be willing to have mobile access. It's really important. And also desktop access, which most of us have. There's a certain level of evening and weekend responsibility. I do not ask our managers or Nicole to be like on Facebook all the time, making sure everybody's behaving. We really look at and having that sort of responsibility and trust in employees. When you plan out social media, it kind of falls naturally in there because nobody is like, oh, like I'm at such and such an event, I'm going to take a picture of this. And then you don't have to worry so much because there's sort of a plan ready in place. They have to be willing to do some scheduling and some reporting. And they have to have a little bit of copywriting and design skills, basically in the line of like if a word's misspelled or something looks like really scary in the design piece, that they can push that back out to the content creators. All right, we're going to bump to the next one. Okay, content creators. Again, this really can be everybody. Social media is so intimidating, but if you take and prioritize some of those platforms and you do some planning, you can really engage everybody in as many ways as possible. Planning and having a plan and a process in place can also encourage people and energize staff to be content creators. Everybody has a lot to offer. And by doing some planning and some processes, it also puts in place that checks and balance. So everybody has the capacity to take a picture. There's a certain level of design skills that everybody can learn, and being able to look at curated content, which I'm going to explain. But also, if you're doing an event or program and there's a Zoom link or an Eventbrite link, everybody has the capacity to drop that into an email with a few descriptions to a content manager to be able to get it promoted. Okay, so content creator responsibilities. There are 5 types of posts that we talk about here, Prevention First, and content creators can have responsibilities from all of them. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. Tips for content creators. I'm going back to that plan. So remember that little table with Prevention First and Coalition Academy? That's the best way to start as content creators, is to look at what the content planners have in mind. Providing content ahead of time is also really important. So you saw the little plan, the little grid that we use at Prevention First. The second step in that process of planning is the creation. And what happens is that every one of those little lines in that table, when it says save the date, the content creator provides Riley with the content for that particular post. Literally copies and pastes it into the table, and then the content manager copies and pastes it into the platform that we're using. We're going to talk about Canva a little bit. There are also mobile apps that allow you to create social media posts. I do not cover them in this presentation. Content creators also have the ability to research curated content. And curated content is a portion of the next training session, but it is the magic way to get content around prevention and look fabulously talented without doing much. Content creators are also should be responsible for setting reminders. So whether it's calendar invites or deadlines, content creators also have the capacity to create mini teams. So if we're a coalition and we're having a take back day, okay, there are lots of people we can add to our mini team. We can find out who the social media person is for the police department. If we're holding it in a church parking lot, who are the people at the church that might be able to help? Do we have volunteers? And do some of them really like to take selfies and stuff? Well, absolutely. We should invite them to be part of our team to sort of curate some of this content. Okie doke, we'll go to the next one. Okay, there's the big question. Number 4, who's on my team? So this isn't so much about being voluntold, but it is about a process of sort of thinking about how we're going to get these things done. Now, you can wear several hats. I wear all 4 of those hats, but I'm also the director of communications. That makes sense. Our administrator wears several hats. She does content posting directly from her Facebook account, and she also has a say in what we might need to push out. So if she has a partnership with the Ohio Suicide Foundation, she's working on something like that, she can push content to Riley and say, hey, this is a partnership, they're having an event, I sit on the planning team, I want to be able to ensure we can support them in the social media piece. Okay, the next session we're going to take a little bit of a detour, and we're going to talk about a specific type of plan. Okay, so this is new to Prevention First, and I'm super excited about it because so much of social media is visually driven. And one of the shortcomings and opportunities for growth that we had here was, how do we beef up our picture taking process? So coming out of COVID, we all have the pictures of the screen with all the little Brady Bunch heads. Okay, that was the best we could do. Now we're all out doing our thing again. So how do we set clear agency goals and prevention goals, and what kind of plan and guidance can we give our entire content creation team, which should be almost everybody, some confidence with these photos? Okay, so we're going to pop to the next slide. When it comes to agency photo goals, we want to, here at Prevention First, we set 3 goals. We want to spotlight our agency in action. We want to highlight connections and partnerships. The last couple of years have been huge on new partnerships and connections. It's a fabulous tool around social media to build out and support these connections and partnerships. And then we also want to show outcomes and products. So prevention is sort of, I tell everybody all the time, you are not going to see a billboard that says 30,000 people did not misuse marijuana in the last 6 months. We just don't have that type of marketing capacity. But there are ways that we can show outcomes and products, even around things that are not tangible, like policy and environment change. Okay, so the next slide is going to show you exactly what that looks. There it goes, fiscal year 2024. It's right where we are at Prevention First. Prevention First in action. We decided that that looked like we were in the pictures. Okay, now I'm of a generation, it takes me like 18 pictures to get a selfie where I feel like I don't know, any number of things that I internally need to work on. It means we all sort of have to look at our comfort level and practice and figure it out. But how can we show what we're doing with us in the picture? Number 2 is we want to highlight those connections, which means that our partners are in the picture with us. That also means that we may be highlighting a location or a sector or a specific message that we're talking about. And then we wanted to showcase tangible items. Some of those take a little bit of creativity. It might be an activity, a curriculum, an agenda. There are ways to sort of demonstrate that. So we're going to pop to the next slide. Okay, so big picture thinking when we talk about a photo plan. Do we need to hire a photographer? I mean, there have been some instances that are statewide that we're working on that it's been like, okay, so we need to put this in the budget. We need to put a couple $100s aside. And we need somebody who can take pictures of people, because conferences are like people everywhere. They're sitting and they want pictures taken and don't want pictures taken. And it's a pretty intense environment to get good pictures. The other thing is we may need to ask for help. So if we're a bigger agency like a hospital or treatment provider, like that's when we go and say, like, who on the team takes the pictures? How do we get them signed up to be at whatever event we need to be? I'm going to pop over to prepare a photo list. The number 1 part of a photo plan needs to be who you need to take pictures of. This is something new to us. Like, it did not dawn on me as the director of communications that this little list could offer such big reward. We had our Coalition Academy. We had 10 pictures that we wanted. We knew that there was a key partner who had not been participating in prevention. We wanted a picture of this partner and Nicole. We knew that that was on the list. We wanted a picture of at least 3 of the vendors, and we listed those 3 vendors. We made a checklist, and then between the team divided and conquered. When you're planning photography, it's important to think of before and after moments. What's happening before the event or activity and what's happening after. I also encourage people to give an email reminder, kind of a people a heads up, we're going to be taking some pictures, and then an opportunity to brainstorm. All right, so the next slide. Okay, so this document is you have access to this document. It's all put together. Everybody who does content creation should have this, okay? I see kind of randomly kind of looking at some of the Q&As, and a lot of this is like, well, how do you take a good picture? I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I think it's important to understand that it's not about doing all of these things and getting 100%. It's about learning and experimenting and evaluating the type of pictures you're getting. Eventually, even the staff that is not super familiar or comfortable taking pictures will catch on to one of these things. I mean, like a simple one is to pay attention to backgrounds. If you're going to put 3 or 4 partners together and all of a sudden you realize the 2 trees are sticking out of people's heads, it's not hard to move everybody to the left 6 feet. But it's to look at and learn how to look at the scope of what's available in your photo frame and what other story you might be telling, okay? Also moving in close. I know that's something when I have to take pictures, I always tell people, it looks like I'm getting close, but I'm really not that close. And then picking 2 or 4 spots in a room, kind of focusing on that. Getting down at eye level. The staff has seen me stand on chairs. They've seen me kneel down, whatever it might be, to get a more personable sort of picture. We're going to flip to the next one. All right, we talked about selfies. Be brave. We can do it. take several and ask for advice. There are people on your staff that take selfies regularly and they can let you know exactly how to do it. I've gotten great examples and suggestions when it comes to selfies. There's also modes that you can use on your camera. Usually can find somebody who, in my case, is younger and knows how to sort of navigate those things. The gathering of the groups, I think it's always something we lend ourselves to in prevention. It's like all the people on the planning committee. And the next thing you know, you got 12 people that you're trying to get into a picture. Sometimes it makes way more sense to group those people out. So like in our case, it'd be like, okay, who from Claremont County on the team? Let's get a picture of them. Let's get a picture of the prevention first staff who participated. Those types of things. And then social media allows you to roll those pictures kind of like a slideshow. And so you can still capture everybody on the planning team and not have to worry about 12 smiling, non-blinking people. We also need to look at the fact that objects can be storytellers, specifically when working with youth. Sometimes it's just easier to get the backs of t-shirts, to get the 12 pizzas lined up on the church cafeteria and take a picture and like, we're feeding, we got all the pizza here from such and such place who donated, and we got 40 kids who are ready to learn how to help their peers make better choices around something. Name tags, programs, all those things actually have value when you think about them and telling the bigger picture. All right, we'll go to the next slide. All right, things to avoid. Really at all cost, really try to avoid the picture of the presenter at the front near a podium, or the single slide shot of a presentation, or a general picture of something. The big thing is the person behind the podium. It's much better to get a board member, a CEO, the planning team. I mean, if you have somebody who's speaking specifically to the faith community, can your keynote speaker or your program provider get a picture with the 3 or 4 church leaders that are participating? It's a much stronger social media content. And then also, lots of times people take pictures of empty rooms or location signage. Registration tables, people arriving, and event signage is a better option for those types of shots. Okay. Social media planning content. Okay, so we all know we're going to talk about these 5 types of content, and you're going to have another thought question, and it's going to be how you can use these types of content in different ways in your agency. So we're going to pop to the next slide. Okay, planned post, promotional post, real-time post, shares and partnerships and advertising. Okay, this is a lot. Okay, I'm going to give you high-end ideas with this stuff. Once again, these terms are very gen specific, very prevention specific, prevention first exhibit specific. You can minutia them however you want, but I want to point that out, that if you Google planned post, you're not going to come up with these definitions. So planned post, we're going to go to the next slide. You can do this in a lot of different ways. Planned post can be like every quarter, we're going to do so many posts, or we can look at planned post as we want to push out information about vaping, and we want to cover 5 posts in the course of 2 months or whatever it is. It can vary in topic, it can vary in content, but planned posts are sort of a way to sort of fill in the gaps that you have with promotional posts. Because promotional post, which we're going to talk about on the next slide, not quite the next slide, but when we talk about promotional posts, those are the things like the events and the activities and all those types of things. These planned posts are kind of what fills in that sort of social media content, because we have to always remember that the algorithms in social media are dependent upon interactions and engagement. No post content, you can't get the engagement. Now, the algorithms are tricky and confusing and they change all the time. What I tell people about algorithms is watch your metrics, see how people are actually responding, and sort of continue to go with that. Okay, so curated content. I mentioned this earlier in the presentation. We're going to flip to the next slide. This is my absolute favorite thing. So curated content are creative assets or tools that are from brands or people or organization or campaigns that we trust. They're people that we know, okay? They're the easiest, most realistic way to fill your social media calendar. And you can schedule these posts. Almost every platform has scheduling tools. I encourage you to look up a tutorial and find them. They are usually not very complicated. But these types of posts can be very specific to your prevention work. And they can be great ways to add in strategies into grant proposals. So one of the biggest things that you should know is which curated content campaigns there are. So like in Ohio, we know that if we're going to write a grant for problem gambling dollars, it makes sense for us to write in some dollars to promote Ohio's Pause Before You Play campaign, because Ohio has several curated content campaigns. I'm going to let you flip to the next slide, okay? Content and curated content is extra special for prevention people because it allows you to pick the organizations that align with your mission. They're economic in the sense that you literally are going to get creative content that looks like you have an entire marketing agency. They're going to be creative and up to date. They're going to save you time. Most likely they're going to be relevant. Almost all of them are vetted. You know, when Ohio did Pause Before You Play, the ad agency was very well versed in prevention. So scare tactics and a lot of the things that we don't want in social media content have already been washed through and discussed. And they're research and evidence-based. So they're also going to be reflective of the community and be inclusive and diversified as you might need. I'm going to flip to the next page. Okay, so we're going to go back one. Save sheet. So these curated content campaigns, they have a lot of stuff in them. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and let you flip one ahead. Okay, so here's examples of curated content that we've used. 988, Change the Game Ohio, you can see them there. Oh, so we're back. So these curated content campaigns, they usually have a lot of other tools. So we'll go to the next slide. I think that's what I had this one listed. So they include brand assets, media kits, like all sorts of stuff. Specific for this training, find the social media kit. It's there. And if you flip to the next slide, I'm going to give you an example of what is going to be. So that's in these campaigns on social media, there is almost always a social media campaign. A social media toolkit as part of the campaign. So here's two examples. Oh, here we go, images. So the social media toolkit, it's going to have example posts. Look at that. It literally says the content of what the post should say. You don't have to write anything. It's going to give you graphics. So right there we have Be Like Nina. That is all formatted and sized and ready to go. They even give you posting calendars. So if mental health Awareness Month, I think, is May, it will say, here's week 1, the 3 posts or the 3 focuses. Because sometimes national campaigns will focus, like we're going to focus on men's mental health or teenage mental health, whatever it might be. And often there's also video content, which adds that diversity of content to your plans. So flip to the next one. Okay, planned posts using curated content. Here they are. So Prevention First did this Ohio Moss had this whole check-in over the holiday campaign that they did. And here we have Youth Substance Use Prevention Month. And so you can see what Riley did up there. She put our hashtags. All those hashtags and stuff were provided by the social media toolkit. It told us exactly what we had to do. And we just copied and pasted and added the image. Chances are she probably even scheduled these. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about how we use this tool. Remember, we saw it way in the beginning to promote something. So in this case, it's Coalition Academy. And the second type of content that we talk about is promotional post. So it's important to look at these promotional posts as part of a marketing plan. If you are like Coalition Academy is just not promoted through social media. We promote it through our email, electronic email service. We put it in our taglines. We have flyers. We have lots of ways that we promote it. So the social media component is just part of a bigger marketing plan. it's also important to understand that these campaigns and trainings can be grant related or agency related. All right, we'll flip to the next one. Okay, every agency has some guidelines. These are our guidelines. When you go back and look through the presentation, you're going to see how we do these promotional posts. We have some specific processes. If you flip to the next slide, we require that everything that gets submitted for a promotional post has this information. We got to know who, we got to know what and when, all very valuable information specifically for Riley, who's going to have to turn that around. We're not going to ask our content managers to be a detective and go looking for the time and the place and the date. We're going to be able to provide that to them, usually in an email, along with any sort of information that the manager might need. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we do these posts internally. Okay, so the team in charge of Coalition Academy, you saw it on the planning document. When it came time to write the content for the impact of DORAs on prevention, that planning team provided Riley with the image along with the exact content and the hyperlink and a date on when they wanted that posted. Riley scheduled it accordingly. We have webinars that come out of our agency quarterly. This particular image gets sent to Riley along with the hyperlink and the content, and it gets posted. All right, we'll go to the next one. Real-time posts. So these are the ones that you do when you're out in the field and you're doing your thing. They include photos. They usually, it's helpful to be able to tag in if you're at a particular location, like I'm at the Red Stadium or whatever. Lots of times your social media platforms kind of almost answer that question for you, like, would you like to tag the Red Stadium? It's a shared responsibility between the managers. Our social media managers are the only ones that can post in real time, and our administrators. If there's a coordinator or another staff person who's out, they actually email me or text me the photos and the information, and then I post. And we'll go to the next slide. This is a great example of a real-time post. It's actually even a share. Nicole was doing this around the Ohio 1 opioid lawsuit funding, and there's all the people, and she was able to post that picture. And she did another great way to build engagement. She tagged herself, so all of her beautiful friends know what she's up to. Okay. This is another type of content that we use, which are shared partnerships and sharing and partnerships. So this is a way for us to highlight program or staff or grant objectives that extend, where those partnerships and connections extend into other organizations. It's a great way for content managers to sort of add an additional layer of what's going on in our agency. If you look here, Jayla was able to, she was a guest at the Ohio Center of Excellence Behavioral Health Prevention and Promotion. They have a podcast. This was an easy way for me to tag the center, also include and help them promote the webinar. And flip to the next slide. This is an example again of shared partnerships, UMADOP Cincinnati and Sources of Strength. Flip to the next one. Advertising is a big piece. Advertising is another type of content. It is more complicated, requires a lot more minutia when it comes to things. But on the next slide, the thing I want to point out in this training, if you flip to the next slide, is that one more hit, it should happen. Yeah. So I want you to understand how small of a budget you can use for Facebook ads. So there's $60 that we used on Coalition Academy, and we paid about 91 cents per click. At 110, we got about a double the number of reach and clicks when it comes to that. So flip to the next one. Okay. When you do Facebook ads, you have a lot of creative flexibility. You have control over placement, audience, and these types of control overs require a little bit more social media skill, but they're not unattainable. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so social media content. So at some point, once you get your team, once you kind of have an understanding of what you'd like to promote in the way of prevention strategies, you're going to land on how are we going to use these types of posts. All right, so now we have I'm going to zip through some of these. I promised I would do this in the allotted amount of time. So we'll go to the next one. Okay, there's a handout for this. I'm going to skip through these next couple slides, but I want everybody to understand that you can get the premier Canva platform access free. If you're a nonprofit, the application is simple. It will give you so much really great tools when it comes to designing the images for social media. I've not always been a Canva fan, but I've become sort of a supporter. They've come a long way with making this very adaptable and user-friendly. I'm going to flip through, I think, the next 3 slides and go on to the next one. So all of these images are step-by-step in that handout. It's going to show you how to take one digital design and make it very quickly accessible across platforms. So in this case, I took LinkedIn and I used the magic tool and I got Facebook, and I didn't have to do any special writing or designing. All right, so I'm going to the next one. So collaboration, again, we're going to flip to this. So if you are the only person, we'll go to the next slide. If you're the only person doing your collaboration, doing your prevention work, collaboration is where you need to be. You need to always have an understanding of who has our shared goals, who do we have relationships with, but also who we have these relationships with, how are they engaging their audiences, and what networks are they using, okay? And then who has demonstrated success. So if we're going to create a social media collaboration around a particular event or outcome or things like that, and there are 2 partners, and one has 5,000 people who follow them on Facebook, and one has 7, you can kind of see where your priorities might be. But it's also, these collaborations are so important in filling gaps. Prevention First is sort of regionally landed, but we have partnerships and collaborations across the state. If we are doing a training around OCAM, for example, we need to make sure, okay, so we want to target people who are doing prevention in schools. Okay, so who at the state has that audience? Who has all of the state social workers or all of the people who are working as school nurses, whatever it might be? How are we going to fill those gaps? We'll flip to the next one. There are lots of ways to build collaboration, but social media is one of the easiest. And so it's really important to have that ask as easy as possible. So I'm going to flip to the next thing. I literally gave you exactly how to do this. So one of the things that's challenging is when somebody emails us and says, help us promote X, Y, and Z. And we have a flyer made. In this particular case, I have literally typed out in an email what we want people to do. I've given them in the red box is exactly what I want them to copy and paste. And there's been an image attached that is already sized and ready to go for Facebook. We have to always remember when we ask people to collaborate, they may be on the same limited resources that we are. So the easier we can make that, the better it is. All right, go to the next one. So when we talk about collaboration, take a moment to think about a specific program, an event, an activity, whatever it might be. Who could you possibly ask to collaborate with you? So to share that content out with their messages and out with their particular followers or reach. All right. The 7th question we're going to talk about, when we flip to the next one, is going to be how to increase reach and engagement. So flip to the next slide. I'm going to talk about engagement around Facebook. So it's important to sort of look at this list when you are looking to move forward in whatever strategies you're doing. Everybody on Facebook, they love to ask questions. If you ask them a question, they love to give an answer. There are a few things I want you to avoid. You can't ask for likes, shares, or follows on Facebook. It will lower you in the algorithm. They really would rather you pay for advertising to do that. So that's why they do that. Helping us connect, call outs, requesting people to tag a friend, again, will lower you in the algorithm. They want you to pay for that engagement. If you flip to the next slide, there are ways to increase engagement, which we really kind of talk about how do you slow the scroll. So when you use hyperlinks to your blogs on your website, when you post videos or events, or you include links or infographics or images, that will slow somebody's scroll. They're not going to go zipping past you as fast if they have some of those visual cues. Okay. And then getting professionally personal is what I like to call it. So that's like showing people behind the scenes. Like before Coalition Academy, I posted a picture of our team stuffing goodie bags. Everybody knew they were getting stress balls and grocery bags and sticky notes, whatever it might be. It's also a great opportunity to celebrate your successes. If you have a staff person who just became a prevention specialist, have been certified, they passed their test, or something like that, it's great to be able to throw up a social media post congratulating that person. And people feel then like there's more of a connection, that you're engaged with your staff and you understand those sorts of things. I'll flip to the next slide. I think we're wrapping up. Here's how we celebrated. There's all those boards, all those goodies for our Coalition Academy. And here's how we tagged in the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio. So we were a friend to be a friend. And then we'll flip to the next example. Here's where we put some video links. To the right here, this is a slideshow that we did very quickly in Canva that we dumped all the pictures from our Coalition Academy, and we're able to share all the things that happened that day. And then our next slide is where are these social media platforms? How can we promote our social media, and where can we be promoting it? So it should be on everybody's business card. It should be something you drop into the comment section during virtual presentations. It should be something that's on all printed materials. If your staff is on LinkedIn, they should be connected to your LinkedIn account. If you have board members and partners or coalition members, they should be asked or suggested that they follow you on their social media platforms, because those are all ways to, oh, look, Jen's on the Problem Gambling Network board and she likes them. Well, let me take a look at that. Oh yeah, like my agency does problem gambling. I'll like PG&O. So that's sort of how that works. And then the last piece is these next steps. So we covered a lot of information. And I'm really hopeful that the handouts and that the way these slides are set up allows you to pull this out and it becomes actionable for you, that you're able to discuss and finalize your teams and platforms with your coalition members, with your administration, that you can start to look at what processes you can put in place, that you can find curated content. So in the next year, find some program, either state or nationally, and plan it into your social media planning. And then you get the free version of Canva. That's a really important thing. And that every quarter you sit back with your team and just have even 30 minutes, what's working, what's not working, and then you can move forward.
Jen, that was
It
amazing.
was a lot.
It wasn't just a lot, it was hugely important and useful information. And you're right, the slides have all that in it and your handouts will be helpful. We do have some questions that I want to see if we can get to some of them. We might not get to all of them. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll see which ones we can excuse me, we'll see which ones we can maybe answer after an email. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, or not in the chat. Please don't put them in the chat. Please put them in the Q&A section. Okay, so someone asked, is a website considered social media? Is it important? How important is a website to a successful social media strategy?
I think everyone should have a web presence. I think that what's important is how you use your website. So if, like, for example, Prevention First has a training calendar and a blog section. I use my website as a way to feed content into my social media, and my social media a way to link back to my website. So if you're putting trainings and events in a calendar, that website then functions as a content creator for your social media. So it's a support to social media, but in the terms of a blog and a calendar. The other components of a website are really just informational. I see them more as like a brochure about your agency than a social media platform.
That's great, super helpful. So we have a number of questions about teams. So, I don't have the money for a team. We have a question around, I know we only have 2 individuals working under a grant, so this isn't feasible. We have someone who's saying that the staff or the leadership doesn't find social media useful? How do you create a team in that environment? And I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit about, just briefly about how to manage your expectations when you run into barriers in the development and management of a team.
So really the biggest thing is to simplify and prioritize. So if you're one person, you're doing it. And you have several different prevention strategies and programs that you're working on. It might mean that for one quarter, you just literally focus on one program. Like this quarter, I'm going to be in 3 schools. I'm going to commit to 3 posts at those 3 schools, tag the school, because if you tag the school and you know who their people are, you'll get a bigger reach, and focus more on creating content that tells your story and less on followers and likes, because that will come with solid content. If this is something that's not a priority for your administrator, your managers, and they don't see how this falls into place, then go to LinkedIn. That's your platform, because
great.
that's where they're going to get the professionals. Sort of like, it becomes more about the professional storytelling of what our great employees are doing. That's your platform if you are looking at a broader support from management.
That's great. That's a great tip. Yeah. Also, I think if they don't support it, maybe they could watch the recording of this webinar. That would help. So there are a couple of questions too around curated posts. And so one of the participants said that they know that curated posts excuse me, are often safer and easier, but had a question about, do you find that engagement is higher with posts that are local?
Oh, actually, engagement is actually very, very much higher with local, because you're going to have your followers, and the people who are liking your page are the people who are demographically or geographically connected with you. What's helpful with a curated post is to fill those gaps. Okay, so for example, if it's a small staff and you do one big conference, or you have one big, all of the 8th graders from all of the world come to learn about something, that's one of your key social media part of your plan and is a priority. Use that other content, like maybe once a week, drop something into social media, because it's a fine line. You might not get comments and whatnot, but you will get those hearts. They will click on the hearts. The people won't maybe click into the link, but they'll be like, oh yeah, this coalition is really pushing Suicide Awareness Month, and they'll hit that click. Curated content tends to get shared, because if people feel a connection with something, if they've had a friend or family member that struggled with substance use, or like I'm a mom, and if I see content around vaping, I know that all my mom friends are struggling with the same thing. I will forward a post that's curated content around vaping.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's really helpful. That kind of that filling in that gaps and connecting. So someone else asked as a kind of a follow-up is, how do you access or find curated posts or social media toolkits?
Well, if there is you can find them. I think the CDC and Health and Human Services has a list of like the national, like what every month is sort of like focusing on. That calendar almost always has curated content linked to it. And then I think that if you follow your state agencies, so, for Ohio, it's the Ohio MOS. It may be your local board that is around mental health or substance use. And then on your personal account, follow the agencies that do the work. I follow the FDA. I follow a whole bunch of stuff that's boring on my personal account, but it generates, like, Facebook smart. And so it's like, oh, Jen has an interest in alcohol prevention. And so then it starts to populate my personal social feed with ideas and curated content. So it's a little bit of research. A lot of it is using your personal account. You can follow, and there's a feed with your organizational's Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn accounts, but it's a little harder to navigate than your personal. It's
That's
smart. The social media platforms are smart. They catch on to what you like really,
That's
really
great.
fast.
That's great and helpful to think about that they really are everywhere. Okay, so another question that we have is around using you said everyone is content creators and you have your staff out there with their cell phones or mobile devices and they're taking events or posting at live events. So if they're posting in real time from a mobile device, how do you handle the issue of photo release?
We have a process in place. I actually have a document that I can even possibly share that sort of gives us sort of outlines about when people are considered in public spaces and when they're not. One of the key tips that if you are at an event that does not have an actual photo release, one of the best things to do is to ask. And I actually have like a script for the staff that they use, saying, hey, we're having a fun time today. Can I get a picture of you and the kids? And if you ask, most of the time people will say no, they're not interested, and then you don't have to pursue it. But you can also sort of, I think that's probably the best way. If there's not a photo release, it's to ask. And if you feel like you're in an environment where there are a lot of people that wouldn't be interested in having their pictures taken, that's where you get creative. I mean, I've already taken pictures of kids' tennis shoes, just to give an idea of how many kids were there. The backs of t-shirts. There are other things that you can take pictures of that can kind of be kind of fun, but without a people in it.
That's great. That's a great idea too. I would never have thought of that. There is a bunch of, I don't know if everybody else is watching the chat. I just looked over there. There's a bunch of stuff popping up where you can see socials from Prevention First. They posted theirs. You see Great Lakes has some socials posted, but also just some ideas about connecting to some toolkits as well. So if you get a chance to look over there, that's great. Jen, if you wanted to share some of those resources, you just like that script and that kind of thing, we would love that. You can just send that to Rebecca and she'll get it out to the group. Yes.
I'm putting it on the list to do.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. And then okay, I have two more questions. The one, and I know you said that you guys aren't really prioritizing Instagram, but I also know that Facebook and Instagram are starting to look a lot more like each other than they used to. So someone asks, what are your thoughts about Instagram stories? That feature of Instagram, and should we think about using those?
Again, it's a tool. One of the reasons we haven't, or I should say I haven't pushed the team into stories, is it has to kind of be done in real time. And not all of our content creators have access to post things in real time. It can definitely work specifically for that audience. And if you can get youth engaged, there's just a lot of like checks and balances around some of the more dynamic tools in social media. Like we don't post a lot of videos because there's a lot less more things that can happen in videos inadvertently. You know, somebody's got a t-shirt on with a message that we wouldn't want to promote, or we see a billboard in the background. There's just a lot of ways where the message can sort of hop into places that we don't want it to be. So it's more of a control thing. A lot of this social media stuff around prevention has to be a balance between spontaneity and also being cognizant of the message that we're sending. So it's a
That's
little bit
great.
of a balance.
That's a really helpful frame to think about. There's a certain amount of control that needs to be exhibited, like that you need to have as an agency to protect your images and your messages. And also looking or appearing or actually being spontaneous. We know that this planned approach is one of the ways that you can appear spontaneous and also be in control of kind of the images, the messages that go out. So that's really helpful. Someone did mention that if you post your Instagram stories, it will show up on Facebook stories because the integration of those two platforms is happening more and more because they're owned by the same organization. Also, so this is the last question that I have in the box. If a couple people who have their hands raised, if you want to throw those questions in the Q&A, it would be helpful to us. Someone did ask, how is the best way to use a blog? and as an expansion of your social media.
Okay.
And I'm
Oh,
actually
and
going to jump in because
thank you,
we
Chris.
are
I didn't
running
see the
out of
time.
time.
I was so excited to answer all these questions. I'm so sorry.
I know. So I'm wondering, Jen, if you would be willing to answer by email, or send to Rebecca the answer to the last question,
Sure.
and then we'll just include that in the follow-up email, if that's all right.
Mhm.
So I have a couple more of slides to share for folks. I want to make sure everybody knows what's coming up so that you have access to this additional training. And Jen, thank you so much for
Welcome.
all the information you shared with us today. I also was jotting down many notes, so thank you very much. I wanted to let everybody know our next session in our deep dive into prevention ethics series is happening next Thursday, so that's coming up. And then we have our planning. I wanted to let you know that our sustainability planning intensive training course is now closed, so applications are no longer available for that. But we have on April 11th a webinar on increasing resiliency in military connected youth. And just a reminder, if you're thinking, oh, that doesn't apply to me, remember that what Kentucky, when they asked in their school survey about being military connected, they found that 40% of their youth were military connected. So even if you don't live in a place that has a military base or you aren't nearby one, you very likely still have military connected youth. So if you have not thought about that population yet, you might want to make sure to tune in to see what you can learn about that. Harnessing AI in your substance misuse prevention work. I have to say, I'm really excited to see this one because I want to learn a lot about this. And Brian Kloss from Johns Hopkins is going to present that, and don't miss that. Strategies for preventing substance misuse in older adults. We've heard from many of you that you're wanting more information in this area, so you asked for it. You're going to get it on April 25th. Working within rural communities. Make sure to tune in if you work in a rural community on May 16th. We have some folks who are going to talk about the unique benefits and challenges for prevention professionals who work in rural communities. This is a training, a 3-hour training, so interactive training on project management skills for substance misuse prevention practitioners. If you're pursuing certification for prevention, this can often meet a category that you need to have training in. So if that's something you're pursuing or considering pursuing, you might want to make sure to sign up for that, as well as, of course, for everybody else, just helpful tools, hopefully, to make your day-to-day work in prevention go more smoothly. And the last one I wanted to profile today was Media Literacy 101 for substance misuse prevention practitioners. Is coming up on June 20th. We already have a lot of folks signed up for that, so that looks like that's going to be a big group, so it'll be wonderful. All right, and here's my plug for social media. We're getting really close to 1,000 followers on our Facebook account. So if you want to join us there, as well as LinkedIn, we do post daily, and we really try to curate content for you that is applicable to substance misuse prevention professionals, really specifically. So if you're interested in getting that information in your feed, please like or follow us on LinkedIn and or Facebook. And with that, last but not least, just a reminder that after this closes, you will be redirected to our evaluation survey. So if you can take a few minutes to fill that out, that would be great, because I read every single comment every time to help us inform our future events and what worked well, what we need to improve. And then it's also something we report to our federal funding agency, to SAMHSA. So thank you in advance for completing that. And one last thank you to Jen. Thank you for all that you did, all the work you put in to pull this presentation together for us, as well as Erin, who was in the background here and also in preparing for this. And a last thank you to Rebecca, who's always here with us with technology, making sure that everything pre-webinar happens, during the webinar, and then also the post-production. So greatly appreciate you as well, Rebecca. And thank you to you all who were here. I see lots of thumbs up and different things coming up through. I love the reactions button on webinars. Thank you to you. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you at a future Great Lakes PTTC event.
Thanks all. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.